All right, so what was this one? This one. We started with was that functions, and we talked about branching. We talked about array. So today we're going to continue from there by talking about what is object. Um, And what is object? This is like a type too, or it's like a data type, but it's known as a complex or composite data type. So object allows you to combine multiple data together into a single source. And when you're talking about objects, there are things that you need to know about it, how to create it, how to access object element, and at the same time how to update it. That's not all about object, but that's just the basic stuff you need to know about the object like that. And when you're talking about objects, so how do we create object in JavaScript? So we have objects like this. So in JavaScript, you should be able to create sheets like that. You should be able to access the data from it, and at the same time, you should be able to modify the object. Let me disable this AI. I don't want it to be uh, going ahead of what I want to type. All right. So how do you create objects? Just like array that we have there. So here too, you can create your object by creating a variable and you assign it to whatever the object. But how do you do that? So I'm using const there. You can use let. But since the object itself is not what we want to change, is what that is going to be inside that we want to change. So most of the time, you always see declare it as a const like that. So here you're going to have your variable name. Then in front of it, you have this curly brace here. So for the array, we're using the square bracket. So this one now, this is how to create object. This is the simplest way, but this is not the only way of creating objects. So we have other way, like by using the new object like this, but this is just waste of typing. This is the simplest way of creating empty object. So this one is going to create empty object for us. But I just mentioned something, and object is a compact form of a way of you bringing multiple data together under a single name. So how do you do that? So when you're dealing with objects, you can actually give all the data that is going to hold, just like the way we have it in the array here, that this variable score is holding all these values. But here now you can see we did not really specify how, like here you arrange all the data, and all the data they have the way you are going to access them by using the index. But with object, you can actually specify the name you are going to be using to retrieve the data that you have inside the object. Apart from the entire name that is holding all of them, there's still going to be like identifier that you're going to be using to retrieve the value or modify it later on, and that is what we call the key. So when you're dealing with object, you're going to have the key, then in front of the key like this, you're going to have the value like that. So this is one of the value, and if you have multiple, you separate them with this comma here, just like the way we have in the array. In the array, what you just put there is value comma, and when you need them, you use the index. But here, no, you have to specify the key that you're going to be using to look for this value later on like that. So again, if you have another key, this is going to be key 2, then value 2, key 3, then value 3, and so forth like that, depending on the number of data you want to put under this object like that. For example, here now we have const we just have, let's just say, class like this. So on that, I can't use this word class because it's a variable, is a keyword in JavaScript. So you can use, let's just say, subjects like this. So under this subject like that, I want to have so elementary. Under the elementary, we're going to have, for example, like English, or let me use something that is more relatable here. Let's just say user. So this user now is going to have name. So the name of the user is going to be this. So this is one of the property under these objects like that. So we have this object, which is user. But inside the user, it have more properties. So when you're talking about property, property are just the data that you are putting inside the object. So array, we call it array element, but here now we call it property. It's just a like different English just to quickly represent something. So based on that English, you already know what they are talking about like that. So we call this one property, and your property is going to have the key, and at the same time it's going to have the value. So the entire line here is a property, but that property is having the key that you're going to be using later on to access the value, because through this key, that's when you're going to get this value. Without the key, you can't get the value. Yeah, so the key now is not this name again. For example, I have age, that's another key, which is like the key 2 that I have here. So this is going to be 2, like that. Again is going to be scores. Then from there, as you can see, it can hold different values. So whatever you are putting here is a value, but this is what you are going to be using later on to access the value at this place. So we have this object like that, and this object is having three properties. The first property is the name, the second one is the age, and the third one is the scores, and each one of them with their respective value. And again too, it can even contain object inside object, so that is just like the way you can put array inside, and that's why they are composite or they are complex, because you can use them to form your own type based on whatever you are doing on the page. And that's what the browser is using to represent all these elements. Every element you are seeing here, they are not just simple stuff like that. There is a lot of things you can do with them, and it uses the object to kind of encapsulate all those data that are related to that particular. So this li that we have now, so if you check under these properties, you see that there's a lot of properties. As you can see, it holds the type of the property. Can you see the text content in case you want to access the content that is there later on, or again, it have a lot of other things we're going to be using this place like that. For example, like the children, in case it's nested, like if it's assuming it has something inside it now, you're going to see all its children. But because it is this operator that is there, so no children, just normal text. But if I click on this one, like this branching one now, like that, as you can see, that one is having children, which is just, it's telling you that there is one element inside it, and the only element you have here is OL. Can you see that it's represented like array of data, but technically it's not array. It is a HTML collection, but it behaves like array. So if you want to access the first element that is there now, you just need to use index 0. So it's going to give you that OL that is there. But OL itself too, as you can see, is another object on its own. And each one of them have all these property that you can use. If you check that, as you can see, it's them too, it have its own children, because this is the OL we are talking about like this. But inside that OL, there is this branching and there is this looping. So with this, you can go to any element, modify whatever you want to modify there, and so forth like that. But for now, we are creating our own custom object. But the way the browser represent everything you have seen on the page, all of them are just objects, and those objects have properties and methods that you can use. So what is method? I've mentioned it before. That's function that is defined on object. So when you say function, it's standing alone. It's just generic. So but when you now say method, it means that function, you are defining it inside your object. Right now we've not defined any method. What we just have is just normal property, but once we do that one later on, you see the method that I'm talking about, or how to do it with the object. So this is how to create your object. But how do you access it? Just like array, you can just call the user directly. But if you call it like this, it's going to give you everything, because you did not mention what you are looking for. As you can see here, it's going to give you all of, because it's not just holding one item, it's holding multiple items like that. So if you just call it, it will just come out with everything that you can find inside that object. But what if you need a specific value there? So I only want to get the age, I don't care about the name or the score, or I only want to get the name, I don't care about the other information. So here, to access a specific value, so you are going to have your object variable name like this, whatever name you're using. Then inside this bracket, you are going to have the key like that. So, and again, the key have to be in quotes when you are dealing with illegal name. But the best way of accessing this thing is by doing it like this. So object name, then dot the key. But this one now, there is no quote. And this one is what you'll be using when the name there is following our variable definition. Because here you can actually put can use illegal name as your key, but that key must be in a quote. If it is a legal key that you want to use, for example, if I want to use something that has space, I have to put in a quote by just a key one like this. Because it's having space, so I need to put in a quote, which is going to be my value. This one will work. So like that, if I save it and run it again, you see that it's part of there. But if you want to access the value, so that key that is having legal name, or when you have a variable, you can't use dot to access it. So you have to put it in this square bracket like the array. But if it is just normal um, data and the key is just the correct one that is there, so here we can just say, for example, we can just say user, then dot. Once you say dot, then you can access any of his key like that. So here I can just say age. So what this thing will do is that whatever that you have before the dot, that's the object. But what you have after the dot, that's the key. So it will go to this user or this object, then look for this key there. And whatever the value that this thing is holding, that's what is going to give you on this line. And once I save this thing now, you see that we are getting 2 because that's the value that you have for that particular key. And if you put any key that it doesn't know about, you get undefined because nothing like that. For example, if I use age 1, there's nothing like age 1 on user. So you are going to get undefined because you are looking for something that is not there at all, or that thing did not even have value there like that. But there's no way you create key that you not put the value. The value, it's always in this pattern. The key followed by column, then followed by value, then comma in case you have another one. If you don't have another one, the comma is not necessary like that. So same thing if I want to access the name there. So what I just need to do is user, then followed by dot, and followed by the key. So once I save this one too, as you can see, this one is giving us the age, this one is giving us the name. But this illegal name here now, you can't use the dot to access it because it will cause JavaScript, you cannot do any illegal stuff in JavaScript. So if you just do key and you now put one like this, even though it's there, but because JavaScript doesn't know how to interpret what is going on here, because this is illegal here now, they must close. That's it will know that okay, it's just one word, but you can't have space in the word. It will think it's something else entirely because that space is the way it's used to know that this is where one thing starts, this is where one thing ends. So in order for this thing to work, it have to be converted to the other method. That one now it's now in code, everything is in code. So JavaScript will not complain because it will see it as just normal. So to do that one, you have to use the square. Then from there, you just pass whatever you are looking for. So here now, as you can see, they are already in code. So it will not treat it as a separate stuff. It will treat them as one item. And once I save it here, you see that I'm getting the value. And again, too, you can do it for all those ones too that you not have illegal. If you want, you can do it with that age too. It will still work. No, I told you, you can do it like this or you can do it like this. But this one is what you're always going to be using when you're dealing with illegal name. Or when you're dealing with variable later on, you're going to see that one. Maybe you have your key saved in a variable. For example, here, assuming I have this variable, so const access like this is going to be, let's just say scores. You can see now, I want to use this value, not this one I want to use. I want to use value that is inside it to access the score. So here, if you come to this side and just say CLG user.access like this, it will not work. So what it will be looking for is access that is inside user, because once you use dot, it will be looking for this value that is inside that place. And as you can see, it said undefined. But what we want to do is that the value that this access, this variable, is what we want to use here. So if it is variable, then you have to use the square. So with this now, it will interpret what is here first, which is going to be this score. Then once it's done, it will now use it on the user. And once this one is saved now, you see that we are getting the score. So this square, you always use it on object when it is variable or you are dealing with illegal name, or you don't really use it for all those ones that you can use dot for because it's quite easy to type the dot compared to open bracket and now put in a quote. So this one and this one, they are doing the same thing. But this one is kind of easier to type compared to this one. Both of them will work. As you can see, it's working. So whether you use this or this one, you are going to get the same result. But it's not left for you that which one are you okay with. And most of the time, it's kind of easier to type this, just dots, then followed by the name easily. But with this, there's a lot of extra stuff to be typed. But if you are dealing with illegal name, you have to do it like this. And at the same time, when you're dealing with a variable that owns the key, you have to do it like this. There's no other way. But if it's just normal key, then you can use any one of them like this. So this is how to access any value from your array like that. And again, too, based on the array knowledge, you should know that to modify it too, we just need to pass the key of the value we want to modify. So if you want to modify anything, it's going to be these objects like this. So objects, then inside this, you are going to pass the key like that. If it is illegal name, then you set it to value. But if it is not, then you can do object then dot key is the same thing as you are changing into this value. So any one of them will work. But you always use this one when you're dealing with variable or illegal name. Why this one will work for just normal key that you have inside the object. So this one, it will look for this key, then replace the value with this, or using the dot method. So we have the dot notation, and this is the array notation. So the square bracket is what we call the array notation, while the dots is what we call the square this thing like that. So that's just the basic stuff about the object. But object is more complex than this, because that's what you are going to be relating with on the page a lot. Like all the elements you are going to be working with, everything come in a form of object. But those objects now has a property associated with them, and that's what you need to start learning about. Okay, this element, what are the properties can I use on it? Okay, this element that I'm focusing on the page, what are the properties that it owns, and what are the action that I can perform on that object? And that's what you'll be doing under this, as you can see, document object model, because you can't do anything here without everything about it is always object, because that's how the browser is representing everything on the page. So everything you're seeing here is just one gigantic object that is holding all of them. But under that object, it's come with a lot of properties and methods that you can use to operate on those data. And those are the stuff that we're going to be doing later on to add interaction to the elements on the page there like that. This is our own custom object, but everything you're going to be using on the browser, they're already there. Your own is just to know how to use them like that. And that's the reason why I show you one of them here. So if you want to see what are the properties a particular stuff is having, just click on it. Under the properties here, you're going to see all the properties. As you can see, it have access key, it have attributes, it have this base URL, but most of all these things, you don't need them. The one you need here is going to be this inner HTML. As you can see, it will give you everything the way you like the HTML code is going to give. But you can see that is this \n. This is a way of talking to the browser that this is a new line. This \n means that thing's supposed to be on a new line. And as you can see, all those extra space we have in our code, they are here. But the browser doesn't render multiple space. It will, like all this space now, it will just convert it to one. But this is how you type it in your code. Even though you are not the one that put this \n, but that thing is what you are doing here. So if you go back to the code, you see that all these things, they are on a separate line. So once you press enter, this is what is talking to the desktop behind the scene. So that enter you press, this is how we represent it in a stream. Anytime they see \n, it means it is enter you need to perform at that position there like that. So, and as you can see, this text is on another line and some other thing like that, which is this one is function. So as you can see, li is on its own. Then after the li, you have the function on another line. Then before you now have ol another line. But before you get to this ol, you can see there's some space here that is here. So those spacing there is what you are seeing here like this. So from line you get to next line, all the spacing is what is showing here. So inner HTML is showing everything, but we have another one, inner text. That one, as you can see, this one doesn't include any space, and it doesn't include any HTML code. It's only the text that is going to, whatever the text you have there, it will just combine all of them together. You can see it has removed all those HTML code, like ol that was here before. As you can see, there's nothing like ol, there's nothing like li. So if you only need the text that is inside the stuff and you don't care about the HTML code, you can use this inner text to get the content. But if it's the content and the HTML code, the way it's being typed, that's the same way you need it, you're always going to use inner HTML. But if it is just normal text, in some places you see that it's the same thing. There is no difference. Why? Because there is no HTML code there. So if there is no HTML code there, as you can see, inner HTML and inner text, they are going to give you the same stuff. But where you have HTML code inside that text, then know that inner text will only give you the text, while inner HTML will give you everything. So that's the stuff like that. And again, too, they come with something known as a method. Oh no, I'm only displaying property, but they come with methods too. And what is method? That's what you can use to, perform some action on them. Function is a reusable block of code that comes together to perform a specific action. And some of these elements here, you can use them, or you can perform series of action on them like that. But how do you do that? That's the reason why we have this document object model, which is a way, the model there is that a way that the browser is using to model everything that you have on the page, like how it's describing the content on the page. And based on this model, you'll be able to get the element that is on the page, like get any element that is on the page, at the same time replace them in case you need to do that, or even create your own if it is not there, because at some time the element has to be created on the fly, not that you have it in the HTML code. You are going to generate it from JavaScript, because the only time it's going to come outside is when someone perform action on the screen. And since the action is not there for the first load, when you load the page, the action is not there until the user click on the button before the thing will come outside. So you have to create it on the fly. Or some of them, like you click on the button to add something, and once you add, you see that you're adding to the list of items. Those things are not there before. It's when you click on the button plus that is adding them. So those things are being generated on the fly, not that they are inside the HTML already. Like that, because there's no way you know the number of items they want to add to the cart. So you have to generate it on the fly, not when you are coding, because you don't know the number of items the user will buy. So at that point, but you know that once they click on this thing, this is what is going to happen, and this is how it's going to look like. So you now generate the code that is going to be created later on when the button is clicked. And in order for you to do that, you need to load this document, which is a gigantic object the browser is giving us through JavaScript that you can use to manipulate anything you have on the page. So we have the DOM. Like that. So anytime someone mentions DOM, what they're just talking about is the document object model, which is what the browser is using to represent everything you have inside that white area inside the page. The document is the one that is representing everything, and you can get access to it in JavaScript by just calling this document. This document that you are seeing here now, this is the gigantic object that is holding everything you have on the page. So once I save now and go back to the console, you'll see that, can you see, it's giving us everything we have on the page. As you can see, it owns everything in our page. And from this object now, you can do a lot of things with it. It comes with different methods that you can use. And what is method? So let me go over it again. We've talked about function. So when you're talking about method, for example, here now I have this object. So I have this const again, user. So the user have a name like that. And we just have this name like this. And apart from this name, it have age, which is going to be 3 like this. But instead of you defining properties like this, you can actually put function too inside the object. So how do you put function there? So to put function, it follows the same pattern. You are going to have the key, which is the same thing as the name of the function. For example, let's just say print like this. So, and after this, you are going to have the colon. Then after the colon, you are going to have the function. You don't need to give it name because the name is already here. If you give name, it's just useless. The one you are going to be using later on is print. Whatever you want to do with this function, when it's called, you just perform it here like that. For example, print me, which is going to be this user then dot name. This is not the best way of doing it, but this is just the basic stuff to explain what is going on there like that. So once I save, then nothing is happening because we've not done anything. And object now, you can access anything from it. For example, you can just say user dot name like this, which is always going to give us the name. But what if I want to access that function that is there? So to access the function, it's still the same thing you are going to be doing. The object followed by dot, then followed by the name of it. But now, it's a function. So you have to put bracket there so that it will be called. Now, when you're calling a function, uh, you know, this is how to define a function followed by the name, and when you want to call it, just the name and the bracket. But the difference between this one and this that we have down here is because is this dot that we have here. And why do we need to use dot? Is because that function is defined. As you can see, it is within the user object, so which means you cannot use it outside of the user. So before you can access anything that is function on that object, you have to mention that object first, followed by dot, just like the property, and followed by the name of the function. This name and age, you cannot use it outside here. And that's this one you have to do the object, followed by dot, then followed by the property you are looking for. And if it is method too, which is function that you define under the object, then the object followed by dot and followed by the normal way you use to call your function. If it's function that is expecting parameter, you pass it the normal way you use to pass it. The difference between them is that method is defined inside object, while function is just defined on its own. So which means you can call it without referencing any object like that. So once I save this in, as you can see, it's going to, and again, I can run it multiple times like this, and it's still going to do whatever I want it to do like that. Or for example, if I want to do add like that, so which is going to be a function, but it's a simple way of doing this thing. So instead of you putting column and you now type function, this is long way, you can just short it like this. So it's still the same thing. So whether you do it like this or you do it like this, they are the same. And this is what I mean here. So instead of us doing it add, we now do function like this. We now run. So instead of you doing it like this line, it's still the same thing as this one. So this is just long way of doing it, and this is short form of doing it. But I prefer this one because you can see you are typing less compared to what you type here like that. So the same thing you type here, say the same thing as this one. So this is way of doing it because JavaScript have different way of doing things like that, and you always want to go with the simplest way of doing the stuff like that. But nothing stopping you from doing it like this if you want, but just stick with one method and always go with the simple way of doing things. But nobody is stopping you from not doing it anyhow you want, just that you have to follow the pattern that this thing is expecting from you like that. So yeah, we have a console, and what do I want to do? I want to receive two things. So I'm going to receive num1 and I'm going to receive num2, just like the way we used to do like that. And from here we just console log out the num1 then plus num2 like that. But before that, I will just console log out, or let me just put everything together here. So addition from user object is like this. So let me just close, and in order for us to see what is going on, let me go to view word wrap, so that it's wrapped to next line. Yeah, as you can see now, so save. So instead of me doing that, so we can just say user then dot add. So this is going to be 310. Again, I'm going to call it with maybe 35 4 like this, and again it's going to be maybe 89 1 and so forth like that. And once it's called, as you can see, it's going to do the same. But what is the advantage? This is not the way you're going to be using it like that. Normally, anytime you have a method, they always act on the user object, not outside word, because that's the reason why you put it inside, so that it will be able to interact with the data that is inside it easily like that. But this is also a simple way just to represent how methods used to, like the way you define method inside the object like that. So you can define it like this, you can define it like this. There's still another way, but these are the basic one that we need. And in order for you to be able to use them, you have to use them through the object that define them. You can't use it, you can't just come here and say add. So it will be looking for where you define the add. And since there is no where you define the add, as you can see, you get error because this thing is not outside, it is inside the object. So since it's part of the object, before you can access it, you have to mention the object where that stuff is coming from like that. And once you put it, then it knows what to do because it can find it as part of what we have here like that. I see some other thing like function returning value, for all those ones we are going to get them later on like that. But this is just because if you look at it right now, I'm just performing action there. But at some time, your function will perform action and it will return back the results of the action that you carry out. Now here now we're just saying add two number, but instead of it to be putting it like this, it will add them, but the results it will now return it back to whoever called that function. And what do you, whoever calls the stuff is this line. So this one is the one, and this line 248 is the one calling this one. This is the line that this one is being called. So when they are being called, those functions can actually return back value to whoever called the stuff, and you can receive, it's returning value right now. But what, when you don't return value yourself, what they are going to return is just undefined. So which means by I try to output, you see that we get the result, but the function is returning undefined.
So everything we'll be doing, our result has to be in our console.
That's what I'm saying, that for now I'm just using console, but that doesn't mean that's the way it's going to be, because don't forget they're going to be interacting with the page, not the console. So your function, they are going to calculate something for you. What they calculated for you there, they are going to return it back to you. So it's not left for you to use it anywhere you want. But right now, I'm just, the function is just doing console log, but it's not returning anything back. And that's the reason why you see that it's returning undefined. When you don't return things back, what that function will just return is undefined when it's done. But if you want, you can actually use this return statement. Whatever you put in front of this return, that's what is going to return back to whoever called this function. So here now I can just say I'm, so I can just say I'm done like that. So which means on this line, the console log here is going to print out the value of what this thing return. What I, when this function is, is outputting everything line by line, and this is the last thing there. So this return, now what you have there, so it will now return it back to where you call this function. And where did we call it? We call it here. So it will return I'm done here. It will return I'm done here. It will return I'm done here. And at the same time, we did not use it here. That's why I'm not talking about them. But this is where we are using the stuff, because I'm console log out what is being returned. And once I save it now, you see that the other one, there's nothing like I'm done. I'm done. Like these three, you can see that there's nothing like I'm done under them, because I did not use what that thing returned. But this is the only place that I'm using the result, because once this thing, entire stuff inside is done, it will return the value that you have here. Like that, to return this value. So it's that left for you to use it or to leave it. You see that I did not use them here. That's why nothing is happening. But you still carry out the action. But what is returned back, I did not use it at that place. But here, for this line 249, I'm using the results. You can see like 249. So 249. See that this line are not the same, because they have it to come back here, perform everything here. But once it's done, everything that you put in front of return, it will return it back to whoever that called it. And this is the person that called the stuff, or this is the stuff that called it. And since this line is being called, so it return, like once it's done with everything it's doing here, so it will now return the value, and the value this one will now see is I am done. And that's the reason why this one is printing it out. But yeah, he's returning it too. He's returning it. But because those lines are not using the value, then nothing will happen to it. And again, too, is there a must? No, because right now, in order for you to see the value, that's why I'm using console every time. But once we get to the done, we start manipulating the content on the screen. So yeah, instead of me just doing console log, I can just receive the result. So now, once this one is done, that result now will be saved inside this place, and I can do whatever I want to do with it later on. Maybe I want to console log it out, or I want to do something else with it, and so forth like that. So, or you want to put it on the screen, you can do whatever you want to do with it there like that. So object is very important, and as you can see down here, that's how the browser is modeling the content you have on the page. And I just kind of the one you'll be interacting most is this document, which is the one that owns everything on the screen. And this true document object here now, as you can see, return a reference to the document containing in that particular window is that white area. And this object now, it comes with a lot of properties and methods that you can use. You are not the one defined, they are already there. And those methods and properties are related to the content you have on the page. So which means the way the document will work here is not the same way it's going to work on another page. It all depends on whatever content you have here. So the element you can find here is to create the necessary properties and methods that you can use to work on them. When you're dealing with input, it knows what it needs to create there, the property it needs to give you for that. When you're dealing with image, it knows the properties and methods it needs to create for you. Then your own is that, oh, once you know image, you know that these are the properties and methods you can use it. Oh, this is text. These are the method and properties I can use it. Oh, this is input. I know that these are the property and method I can use on them. And how do you get those access to them? You get access through this document. But when you want to get access, there are different things that you want to do on the page, or that you are going to be doing on the page later on. One of them is for you to get the element that you already have on the page. Another thing you are going to be doing later on is to replace the element content. Like you've already gotten the element too, but you want to replace the content that is inside it. For example, here now, this one that is internal now, I don't want it to be internal again. I want to change it to another content. So through JavaScript, through that document, you can perform all these actions based on the experience that you already have from all these items you have from number 1 all the way to this number 7. So those are the stuff you now combine them together, like they are being combined together to start doing all the action that we have down here. For example, here now, how do we get elements? So there are different ways of getting elements that you already have on the screen. So getting elements on the screen, there are different ways, but I will only bring the common one or the basic one that you need right now. So all the elements on the page, you can get elements by ID. So this one is useful when you give your element ID and you want to get it through that ID. So for example, going back to the page here, and let me go up to the starting point. You can see that we have this H1. So this H1 now, I can just give it ID, which is going to be heading like that. For this paragraph, like that, I'm just going to give it ID para like that. So through this ID now, you can locate this element. Just like the way you used to do in CSS, that's the same thing we want to do here. So we want to locate the element based on the ID that is on it. And once we get the element, we manipulate it by changing whatever we want to change on that element. But apart from that, you can actually get by class too, just like the way you used to do your selector. That's what this thing too is following, like that. Just like we do it in a different way here, but it's still the same pattern that this thing is following. So we give this element class, let's just say para one like that, so that it's, or let's just say para, because there's a difference between class and ID. So let me scroll down again. Do we have anywhere we have paragraph again? There is no other place. So what I can just do here is to have this div here. Inside this div, I'm going to have h3, so heading level 3. And apart from that, I'm going to have this p like that, lorem 35, just to generate some dummy text, like that. So again, another p lorem, let's just say 20 like this, to just generate some. But this one now is going to have that class para. So based on the class and ID now, we want to target our element. So that's what we want to do here. So we want to be able to select our element by ID. Again, here, so um get elements, but this one now is having S, because class is not just on one element, it's on multiple elements. So by class name like that. Another way of doing it is by using the method that I love to use, which is get elements by query selector like this. As you can see, this one is just single. And again, we have the opposite too, which is get elements by query, so query selector all like that. So when you want to get all of, like this one, that's just the flexibility of it. Even though it's the same selector you're using, you can talk to it that you want all of them, or you only want the first one it can find. So this one will give you the first one it can find, even if it is multiple element there. Why this one will give you all of them? Even if it is one, it will return them in a form of, you can see all or multiple. So that means like array of data. Like it will return them in a form of array. Then if you need any one of them, you have to specify the index of the one that you want. But for this one, it's only returning one. So the first one it can find. It doesn't care about the remaining one. It's only the first one. It always start from the top, then it keep looking for the element. The first one you can find there, that's when it to stop. But this one, it will look for the all of them on your page, and it will bring everything for you, and you can start doing whatever you want to do with them, like that. And at the same time, after we're able to select them, we should be able to change the element content like this. So there are different way of changing the content, but here we are going to be using that our this in inner HTML that I talked about. So inner HTML, so is what we are going to be using to change the content. But that's not the only way of changing the content. I told you you can use our inner text too, and at the same time we have some other methods you can use to change the content. But yeah, we're only changing the text content. Let me put there because it's only text that this one will work on, or it will work on them. But we normally use this one to do the text. But let me just leave it like this as content because you can. But for that text one, it doesn't do HTML. But this one will do HTML changing from here like that. So how do we get our element? So yeah, in order for us to have reference to the elements, I want to create a variable to represent what I want to get on the page. Because if you don't put it in a variable, every time you need the element, you're always going to, write the same code again and again and again. But variable, you can give it a value, and that value you can have access to it later on and do whatever you want. So yeah, I'm going to give it a get element by ID. So I'm the one creating this name. You just use the same name so that it is correspond. But later on, I'll be using name that is corresponding to what is going on the page. Now, when I'm dealing with sign up button, so what I will just do is name it sign up button here, then connect it to the element that matches that stuff on the page, so that when you're reading your code, you know what this thing is all about. If you like, I told you your variable can be anything you want, but always use a name that is describing what is holding, so that when you are coming back later on to read your code, you will not be you will not wait for 1 hour to understand what is going on there. Based on the name, it will give you the hint. Even though you are the one that write the code today, after 6 months, if you come back there, you start looking at this thing that what am I doing here? But based on the name that you're using there, they will give you hints quickly to understand what is doing. So how do you get the element? So don't forget, is a document that owns everything on the page. So that document, it comes with this method, which is the same thing, get element by ID. So what it needs from you is just the ID of the element you are looking for. It will go to the page, start looking everywhere until you find the element that have that ID. And if you cannot find it, you get null or undefined
So
there.
I have to start with this cost and this.
Yeah, because I want to save it in this variable. That's the reason. As you can see, it will either give you the HTML element or it's going to be null like that. So I want to do, this is what I want to, this action I want